One of the most common questions that come after is, what is the truth? Okay, fine, I understand this religion is not, but what is? If you give up this belief, what else is out there? Where do we go? What is the truth? After all, as a Jehovah's Witness, you believed so strongly that this is the truth. I believed it too. That maybe we were even willing to die for it. That's how strongly we believed that it was the truth. And then realizing that it's not. It was devastating. It was for me. So I'm pretty sure it was for many of you. It's not easy to overcome this. However, when you give it up, when you realize that the teachings are wrong, that the doctrines are false, your mind can literally collapse. Mine literally did. Because that is the basics of our beliefs for everything. It's an answer to where we came from, where we are today, and where we're going after. Those three questions are almost essentials to our existence. Otherwise, our mind is going to go crazy. What is the purpose of life? Why are we living here? What is really happening? Were we created? Did we evolve? What's going to happen to us in the future? What's going to happen to us after we die? We all want to know those answers. It's not easy to find those answers if you feel like what you believed was wrong. You were tricked. You were deceived. What do you do after? How do you determine if something is true or not? Is it even possible? Well, when you were a Jehovah's Witness, it was very easy. It was clear cut to you. What is true was very simple. Religion was true. The doctrines were true. If you ask a Jehovah's Witness the proper answer to that question, the truth is the current understandings given to us by the governing body. That is the truth for them. And if something disagrees with that, it's obviously false. Because we are in the truth. We used to say, well, I'm in the truth. This person is joining the truth. This person fell out of the truth. This person is interested with the truth. We believed it so strongly that our mind literally accepted the religion as the foundation of what the truth is. First time I heard about this mindset was actually from a Muslim. A Muslim told me that if somebody says something that agrees with Quran, then there is no need for them to speak. Because they already have a Quran. Why would you say something that agrees with it? There is no need to listen to you if you agree with Quran. We already have a Quran. Why print anything else? Why speak about this? We just share what Quran says. But if it disagrees with Quran, then it's obviously false. Because Muhammad is the only prophet, the true prophet, and Allah is the only true God. And Quran is the word of God. With that mindset, it's almost impossible to wake up Muslims. It's very, very difficult. And this is why the entire nation of Muslim people, it's of no interest to Jehovah's Witnesses. They have a very little success turning Muslim people into Jehovah's Witnesses. Very little success. But how do you change that mind when you realize that everything you believed in was wrong? And now you got to reconstruct it. I remember I literally had to wipe everything that I believed in. Just wipe it clean. Go into a blank page and tell myself, imagine that you came from another planet and you have not read any book and you don't know anybody's biases and you don't know anybody's opinions. And then I just picked up the Bible. That was my first start after I woke up from Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm going to read it for myself and evaluate the evidence and see if I can answer the questions myself. But remember, it's a very humbling experience. Because Jehovah's Witnesses, they're always believe that they have the best knowledge, the best education, the best website, the best Bible, the best community, the best understandings, you name it, the best. And it takes a humble approach to say, I was wrong. I don't have the best knowledge. I don't have the best understanding. I don't have the best community. I don't even have the best love. It does take a toll. And when you go through this, then guess what happens? You have to humble yourself and start educating yourself. And the very first thing that you should educate yourself is about this topic. What is truth? The proper definition of truth is everything that is factual and agrees with reality. The Jehovah's Witnesses are masters are changing definitions of words. So the first thing, the basic of before you start learning anything else, is you have to learn what is the truth. Everything that is factual and agrees with reality. Well, how do you determine whether something is factual or not? And how do you know what is real, what it's not? Well, that is a challenge for every single human out there. And this is why, although the truth is only one, there are literally 3 levels in our mind for the truth. The very first layer is called objective truth. Objective truth is everything that is actually factual and everything that agrees with reality. Objective truth is outside of our mind, is not biased, and it exists out there, and it's all what we want to know. However, we don't always know what the objective truth is. Objective truth does not change. The best example of objective truth is mathematical equation. 2 + 2 is 4, and that was 1,000 years ago, and it is today, and it will be 1,000 years from now. It will always be true. It will never change. This statement, 2 + 2 is 4, or any mathematical equation, we can teach a machine to do this. And the machine will tell you this statement is true and this statement is false. Because that is how accurate it is. There is no mistakes in it. If you change anything about the equation, it might be a different equation, or it will be simply wrong. Objective truth is what we're after. Scientists are after finding out an objective truth. And they do it through testing. So they come up with hypothesis, then they do test after test after test after test. Then they observe the evidence and they come to a conclusion. That doesn't mean the conclusion is true. That's why very often they don't call it the truth, they call it a theory. Like, we have a hypothesis, we tested it, and we have results. From those results, we have something that is observable, measurable, and repeatable. And after they have those 3, they come up to conclusions that allow them to say, we believe that this is true statement. Because everything outside math has what we call a margin of error. Margin of error. So if you measure a table, right, you can only measure the accuracy of that table with the tool that you're using. The more accurate the tool, the more accurate the measurement will be, right? But even that line on the measuring tape has a certain thickness. So where do you measure to? The beginning of the line, middle of the line, or the back of the line? There is always something called a margin of error. However, we're trying to eliminate that margin of error as much as we possibly can in order to find out what is the objective truth. But that's the first layer, right? With the objective truth, what we can do is we test things, and when we see that the results are over and over and over the same, and then we test it by asking other people to do the same without talking to us, and then we're measuring the results against each other without the communication. Often we measure placebo effects, so that confirmation bias, the personal opinions don't get involved. And then we compare the results to see, okay, we have this, this, and this, and this, and now we're coming up with what we call laws. Laws of physics, laws of motion, laws of thermodynamics. We can put mathematical equations into the things that we see around us, because the evidence is clear that if we have something that is repeatable, that is observable, that it's measurable, chances are it is true. And we've been wrong before, even though we use scientific method, but I believe strongly that scientific method is the best path to truth. That doesn't mean that we always get it right, but it has the least amount of chances of being wrong, because we're doing testing one after another. Now, that's all what we're after, but that doesn't mean that that's what we believe in. Because the second layer after the objective truth is called authoritative truth. Authoritative truth is every time our mind is convinced that we're right based on somebody else's beliefs. This is where pretty much all religions lie. When you hear a pastor, elder, any religious leader telling you something, and you think that that person is smarter than you, more competent than you, more knowledgeable than you, more skillful than you, more experienced in this area than you, they are smarter than you, therefore You take their word over yours. Even if something doesn't even sound right, doesn't it sound logical? It doesn't matter because you believe that they will not lie to you. Therefore, you will take their word over yours. Does that make sense? If you go to a dentist, the dentist is smarter than you when it comes to teeth. So you're not going to sit there and think that they're trying to cheat you or just for money, or some of them could. But if you trust the dentist, you know what? You are an expert in this field. I trust your opinion over mine. I'm not going to do my own teeth, right? Because they are an expert and we have to trust experts. Is it possible that they could be wrong? Of course. No matter how good of an expert that person is, they are humans and they're making mistakes. And it's the same thing when it comes to religious beliefs. For most people who were in a religion, you're listening to the people from the platform and you take everything as truth. And that was the challenge. That was the biggest challenge because we trusted them. I hear this time and time again, and I had that too. We have this shelf in our mind. It's called, they know better than me. And every time we have a question that we cannot really answer and we have doubt, we put it on that shelf. These guys are smarter than me because, you know what, maybe I didn't have time to read the whole Watchtower from cover to cover. And maybe I never read the Bible, never mind even reading the stuff that they quote from other books. There's no way I'm going to do that kind of research. These guys are sitting in Bethel with the Bible and they're studying and studying and studying and they're doing research and they have a team of people who do the background checks and their accuracy of that information. There is no way I could beat that. There's no way I could come to better conclusions than them. Do you know when people wake up? They wake up with one thought. One. When your answer to whatever question you have regarding any doctrine, when you believe that your answer is better than theirs, that's the beginning. And it's a scary thought because you know where that leads. But I remember like it was yesterday. I was driving home and I was examining the overlapping generation. Excuse me. If you don't know what it is, go search it up. Jehovah's Witnesses have a very weird understanding of what generation means. And I was examining what they teach and I'm like, it just doesn't make sense. I have a different theory about it. And I felt for the first time, I think ever, that my answer was better than theirs. And that was the beginning of waking up. Because once you allow that thought in your mind, then it's like, okay, if this is wrong, then what else is wrong? And then the snowball effect happens. When you start doing more and more research, and then it's like, oh, maybe 5% is wrong, maybe 10, maybe 15, maybe 20. The more you do research, the more you read, the more you educate yourself, sooner or later you're gonna realize, I'm at 50-50, and if I keep reading, if I keep researching, you're only going one direction till the house of cards falls apart. It's very, very powerful to ask yourself, who do you take as an authority? Who do you give that ticket to say, you know what, you're smarter than me in this area, therefore I will believe you, what you say, and I will accept it as truth. And remember, whoever you give that ticket, they can make mistakes too. I don't care if you're listening to university professors, people who are experts with many degrees, they make mistakes too. And I think if anything that can really teach us from the experience of waking up from Jehovah's Witnesses is the fact that we could be wrong even though we believe something so strongly. I was ready to die for it. There's no problem for me. I believed I'm going to have everlasting life after Armageddon. Right? I'll be resurrected. I believed it so strongly that it didn't matter to me what kind of challenges I will have to face, what problems. They will all be done away with. But here, now, you wake up from this, you leave this mindset, and you're trying to figure out what is true. It is very difficult to trust others. Very difficult. But it is possible. You just have to see first, when it comes to authoritative truth, is if that person walks their talk. If they walk their talk. So if somebody is trying to teach you about money, for example, and success, and they just don't have any money, they're broke, they're living off of government, and they're trying to teach you about money, do not listen to them. They're not an authority for you. If somebody's obese and they're trying to teach you about nutrition, do not take their word. I don't care if they're right. They're just not walking their talk. They're trying to teach you about fitness, but they can't even run, 2 blocks. They're not the authority for you. That doesn't mean you have to be mean to them. You listen and like, you know what? I appreciate this, what you're saying. Just don't take that as an advice. Somebody has, 3 divorces behind them and they're single right now. Don't take their advice regarding marriage. It's just not the wise thing to do. So first thing is look if somebody walks their talk. Second, check if they actually did their homework. Do they have any credentials in this field? What kind of education do they have? Very often people don't have the proper education and they're self-taught and they have very strong opinions. And I tell you, usually the strongest the opinion is, the less educated the person is. It's just, I don't know, it's been my experience with many people. So be careful with that. Authoritative truth is where all religions fall into that category. Because people don't do their own testings. How do you test something that happened 2,000-3,000 years ago? You can't. So you just believe that the book that you're reading, or the person who's reading the book to you, that they're true and they're right and this is holy and therefore you're not supposed to question it. That is an authoritative truth, when you're literally turning off your mind and you're trusting somebody else's mind or written word, and you're saying this person and his reasoning and his knowledge and skills and what he wrote is more important than what I think. That is actually a very dangerous place to be. So be careful. Now the third one, a third layer of truth in our mind is simply our personal experience. We experience this world through our 5 senses. And as those different stimulus come to our mind through visual or auditory or kinesthetic when we touch things, or olfactory when we smell, or gustatory when we taste, those 5 senses basically are a signal to our brain, and then we make sense out of this world. Now, there are certain things that we experience, but we can't really explain it to anybody. We can't prove anything to anybody. We could say, well, I saw this person doing this and that. We're like, well, prove that you saw them. Well, I can't. I had a dream last night that I flew to the moon. Well, how can you prove this to somebody? You can't. There's no evidence to it. And then there's no evidence. How do you expect somebody else to believe it? Well, if they trust you as a person, then yes, they will say that you're telling the truth. However, if it is your own personal experience, that's all what it is. It is your personal truth. It's not objective truth. Remember that. If you experience something, you see something with your own eyes, you experience something with your own body, through your senses, chances are it is real to you and you believe that it was true, but it's not always so. And you also make a mistake, and sometimes your own eyes will trick you. You go to any show where there is a so-called magician, he counts on you making a mistake by believing into the tricks that he's showing you. And often, it's not even that somebody's lying to us. It's simply that we're missing pieces of information. I mean, this is what the whole trickery or magic is all about. One person is in the middle of a crowd, right, in front of the audience. The magician comes, puts this pretty girl in the box, opens the box, and the girl is gone. And 3 seconds later, she appears on top of the roof of the theater. She's right there on the other side. Even if she would run from the box, there is no way she would have made it to the other side. Magic. And you see, it's the same person, right? How did that happen? Well, they're not lying to you. They're just tricking you by not telling you that the second person is their twin. It's a twin sister. And then you didn't know that. So you're looking at, the person disappeared here and he showed up over there. And you're like, whoa! A little piece of information that is missing will trick you, or will cause you to come to the wrong conclusions. And that is the biggest challenge when it comes to religion. Because when it comes to religion, most religions will simply tell you pieces of information. And then you come to a conclusion and you're thinking you have it right. You understand it. You got it. God guided these people. But there's certain pieces of information that you're missing, that you don't know, because it happened behind the closed doors, because the decisions were made by people who did not vote on front of you. They did it all behind closed doors, and you don't know how those things took place. I often use this example of bow and arrow. Imagine you're shooting an arrow in front of a whole bunch of people. You're shooting it through the bushes, blindfolded. And then you take all these people with you, you go to the other side of the bushes, and there's a huge barn wall. And the arrow is right there in the middle of the wall and in the middle of a target, right there in the bullseye. Right? It's great. And you're like, look, there's a signature on that arrow. And that arrow is definitely yours. Is it possible? I mean, the best archers in the world, Olympians, would not make that shot. How is it that this person who is complete rookie and never shoot any archery before in their life and was able to do this? It must be Holy Spirit. I mean, that arrow must have been guided by God, by supernatural, by angel, whatever it is people believe in. And people are like, well, it is impossible. There's just no way that this could possibly happen without the guidance of a supernatural source. But there's one piece of information missing. And the piece is this. After the arrow was shot, somebody painted the target around the arrow. And nobody knew about it. And because that piece of information was missing, everybody came up with this understanding that it must have been guided by a Holy Spirit. This is how every single decision is made behind the closed doors in Jehovah's Witness organization. Or most of religions, as a matter of fact. People come up, they vote, this is what we want to do, this is the doctrine that we want to spread. People vote, half of the people say yes, half of the people say no. Okay, forget it, we ain't doing it. Next time, 3/4 people say yes, 1/4 says no. Okay, majority voted, fine, we're doing it. And then we're sending the information to people and they're saying, based on the scripture that we found after the decision was already made, this is what the truth is. They will never tell you about the people who voted against it. Never, not a chance. Because the person who voted against it now has to go to the congregations and pretend like he believes it. I think this is one of the hardest pills to swallow. Once I read Crisis of Conscience, I realized that's what's happening. That you could be against a doctrine, saying this doctrine is not true, but you're outvoted by majority of governing body members. And now you leave this room and nobody knew what happened in that room. You leave that room and you have to not only teach it, but disfellowship people who don't believe it, even though you don't believe it. Now that is messed up. A governing body member would not believe a doctrine. He would leave the room and he would have to disfellowship those who have the same belief like him. Try doing that. I don't know. For me, when I read it, my heart just collapsed. I'm like, Mom, it's true. This is how the decisions were made among elders as well. We just made decisions about who's going to be an elder, who's going to be ministry or servant, or who's going to be the next, pioneer or not, on that level. But that's how the governing body does when it comes to doctrine. They just put things in such a way, and there's pieces of information missing. So now, when you go forward, right, and you're trying to establish what is true and what is not, I ask you to learn how to examine evidence. Learn how to examine evidence, because that's how you're going to get closer to the truth. And remember, there is always margin of error. That you could be wrong. No matter how much you test it, no matter how much you study the subject, there is always a room for error. So if more information will come up, if there's more evidence, you could change your mind. So you could say, this is what I'm convinced that it is true. But if more evidence are presented to me in the future, I will change my mind. But for now, I am convinced that this is true. And this is how we start reasoning, right? Using the scientific method, using how to examine evidence, and then you figure it out what is true, what is not for yourself. And like I said, two people can be watching the same thing. They can come to different conclusions. When they choose a jury, okay, and they're trying to judge somebody, one of the most important questions that the prosecutor or the lawyers or the defense attorney will ask when they're choosing a jury is, how do you determine that something is true? How do you determine that something is true? How do you know that something is true? What convinces you that something is true? This is a question you have to answer for yourself. But I strongly encourage you to learn how to evaluate evidence in order to come to the right conclusions, because very often people are so easily misled when they leave any high control religion because they don't know how to think. They don't know how to think. I didn't know how to think. My mind was all over the place. I didn't know how to evaluate evidence and how to come to right conclusions. I'm still learning. We all do, and we will be until we die. That's the beauty about progress and our minds, and we will always be learning. But here, I'll give you one example. Let's say somebody comes to you and says, I have this crystal, and I'm gonna sell it to you, $100. This crystal cures cancer. I'm telling you, I have my own example in my own family. The doctors were telling my uncle that he's gonna die in 2 weeks to a month max. And we bought this crystal, we put it right next to his bed, and guess what? He's cancer-free today, where all the all the doctors gave up on him. How is it possible? It must be because of this crystal. And I'll sell it to you today for good price, $90. I tell you what, it is equally lazy to say, this is garbage, you're scamming me, I don't want to hear it. It's all BS. As it is, here's my money, I'm buying it. Both ways of approaching this are completely lazy, right? This is a moment when you start asking questions. This is a moment when you say, well, what kind of testing was it? If this crystal actually emits something, can we detect it? What kind of tool would we use to detect it? Is it visible? Is it measurable? Is it repeatable that we can do this kind of a test? What if we would take these crystals and we would put it underneath people's beds in the cancer hospital? But we would only put it in half of the beds, in half of the hospital. And then over a long period of time, we would record whether the people in this half of the hospital would have better chances of getting well over the other half of the hospital. That's how you test things. That's how you evaluate evidence. That's how you ask questions about this, because you can be scammed so easily. And I was too, don't get me wrong. We're all sometimes hearing something like, yeah, this sounds so great because he has an example of somebody that they know. And they said, well, the doctors couldn't help me and this thing helped me. That's just one example, right? But there are many like this. When we trust somebody because sometimes we're desperate. We're desperate for help. We're desperate for hope. And people take advantage of that. Some people are even genuine. They just blindly believe, just like in their religion. People blindly believe that there is some sort of hope, and then there will, Jesus will come with a white horse and kill everybody except you and some of your friends. And you're going to have a beautiful house with a panda in the backyard and a waterfall. And people genuinely believe it because their life is really hard. Maybe their loved one passed away and they want to see them again. Maybe they really struggling financially. Maybe they have health problems. Maybe their child died. Maybe they have, many challenges that they can't cope by themselves. They need hope. They need certainty. And Jehovah's Witnesses will show up and will give it to them. And because we will do whatever it takes to stay away from dying, stay away from depression, and they offer hope, and people will fall for it. How do you protect yourself? Learn how to evaluate evidence. Learn what is real and objective truth. Give yourself a little bit of space of, okay, this is what I understand, but there's a margin of error. I could be wrong again. Very often Jehovah's Witnesses leave and they're like, well, I knew the truth, now I know it's not the truth. Now I know the truth about the truth and they think I'm the smartest person on this planet. No, you're not. You're just starting. You're starting your journey, you're starting your education, and the more you learn, the more you'll realize how little you know. So instead of being stubborn about it, keep learning, keep discovering. If somebody has a different opinion, it's okay. It's okay because we can disagree and still be friends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.